Alright guys, back with another video. Quick update on it wasn't a free agent signing, but it's a pretty significant fantasy signing for a pitcher. It was an extension for the St. Louis Cardinals. Miles Mikolas re-signed for a 4-year, $68 million extension. It's a really good pitcher. I'm a bit biased because I'm really close friends with his brother. I work with him, and but he's a real solid pitcher. He came over from Japan last year on a 2-year deal, and now they just re-upped him for pretty much the same deal that Nate Eovaldi got from Boston. So that tells you what they think of him, because Eovaldi really pitched lights out last year. Mikolas last year in the first part of the season, he was like something like before the All-Star break, he was like 11-1. He doesn't strike out a ton of guys, but he doesn't walk anybody either. So, I mean, he's really solid. He's a guy that you're going to want on your radar. I'll get a little bit more in-depth with him when we do the Cardinals, probably sometime next week. Because today we're going to wrap up the NL East with the Washington Nationals. And actually, I've taken notes on the next few teams that I'm doing, and the Nationals are the beginning of it. Then when we get into the NL Central, we'll get into a little bit more of it. The next few teams I'm doing, we're going to be focusing a lot on the guys at the major league level, so there's not going to be a lot of like in-depth information because the names you should already be pretty familiar with. The next few teams that I'm going to be doing, which is Washington, and then Milwaukee, and then the Cubs. Pretty much all of their big name talent is at the major league level. They really don't have a lot to speak of on the minor league level. So we're going to be spending a little time on each team. I don't anticipate these videos being too long for the next couple of videos that I do. As a matter of fact, I'm hoping to, I'm picking up my daughter from school right now. I'm hoping to knock out the videos for the Brewers and the Cubs maybe tonight at some point, and then move into the rest of the NL Central with the Pirates, the Reds, and the Cardinals either later this weekend or early next week, so that way we can wrap up the National League with the Western Division and then move on to the American League, because I want to get a move on these just because it's now almost March, drafts are going to be starting, and I want you guys to have the information that I want to give you. Plus I want to do some cool things, like a couple of videos where I do a couple of live drafts where I let you guys see like my thinking of drafts, how they go, the flow of them, where I'm looking to pick my sleepers, where I'm looking to, take chances and risks and stuff like that. I'm also going to give you guys some insight into the keeper and dynasty world. I'll show you guys some of my dynasty drafts that I'm doing. I'm actually all 3 out of my 4 dynasty leagues are starting the rookie drafts within the next couple of days. So be on the lookout for those videos. So getting into the Nationals, starting pitching wise, obviously it pretty much starts with Max Scherzer. I mean, he's a stud. He's lock and load, every format, every way possible. Redraft leagues, he should be one of the first pitchers off the board. Keeper leagues, you're absolutely using a keeper on the guy. And if you're in an auction draft, you're spending a lot of money. You're spending $40 on him. In a dynasty league draft, you want him. I traded for him. It was either last year or 2 years ago in one of my dynasty leagues, and I gave up a lot for him. So you definitely want him on your team. So there's really not much else I can say about that. Steven Strasburg, not as valuable as Scherzer, but he had a really solid year last year. The couple of years before that, he'd had some injury issues where he'll go on the DL for 3-4 weeks and come back, and he'll have a couple of shaky starts, but then once he gets his legs under him again, he'll have some solid starts. Last year, he put together a really nice year. So I look for him to be really strong this year. The Nationals as a whole, I look to be really strong. And it kills me to say that as a Met fan, but I'm really happy that Bryce Harper is probably not re-signing with them, because it would make them the clear favorite in the East. I really think they're going to be just as good and possibly better without Bryce Harper. So I don't see too many weaknesses on this team. The bullpen, maybe we're going to get into that in a second, and bullpen is maybe where I see their biggest weakness. The third fantasy relevant starter that they have is Patrick Corbin, who came over on a free agent deal from the Diamondbacks. Good, solid left-hander. He had Tommy John surgery a few years back and just rebounded into just being a nice, steady, you know what you're going to get out of him. He's going to make almost every start. He's going to pitch you 6-7 innings. You know, he's not going to blow you away with his numbers, but he can have a couple of games where he can strike out 10, 12 guys. He doesn't walk a lot of guys, so his ratios are really good. His whip is always, right around 1.2, 1.3. I think the worst you're going to see from him is 1.4, which, isn't bad, but then he'll balance that out by getting a lot of wins, especially on a team like this. You could probably, all three of these guys, you could pencil in for a minimum of 15, 16 wins this year. Scherzer probably a little higher than that. Strasburg maybe a couple higher than that. Corbin, that might be the number. It might be 15, 16. So they're three guys you want to target in all leagues, any format. Just try and get them on your team. The bullpen. Coda Glover was a part-time closer last year. Then you have Sean Doolittle, who have closing experience. And then you have Trevor Rosenthal, who's a really, really intriguing play. He was the closer for the Cardinals for a while. And then he got injured, he got in his own head, and all of a sudden he just forgot how to pitch. And now he's on a deal with the Nationals. I think it's a good place to maybe reestablish himself. However, I do feel the media pressure is going to be on a little bit, especially because they're not re-signing Bryce Harper. I think the media pressure is going to be harder on the whole team as a whole, because it's going to be like, okay, well, now let's see what you can do without Harper. At least with, in a situation like Baltimore with the Orioles, with Manny Machado, everyone knows they're going to suck this year. Everyone knows they're rebuilding. Everyone knows that, that's why Machado's not on the team, because they're not going to win with him, so why keep him? Where the Nationals are still trying to win. So, and they just gave away their best player. So, the heat's going to be on. So, I'm not sure with the microscope that they're going to be under, if it might not necessarily be the best situation for Rosenthal to maybe reestablish himself as a closer. Because I do feel that the one weakness that Washington has is going to be their bullpen. Their starting rotation is pretty solid. Their lineup is deep. And we're going to get into that in a second. But the bullpen is very, very shaky. So I would tread very lightly. I still think all three of these guys are going to have fantasy relevance, especially in leagues that reward holds and saves. Because I do believe they may go with a closer by committee with all three of these guys and just mix and match the best situational stuff for them. Where one day it's going to be Rosenthal, one day it's going to be Doolittle, one day it's going to be Glover. So unless some guy gets hot, then they might feed the hot hand. But other than that, I think they're going to have marginal fantasy value, but none of them are going to be a stud in the relief spots for you. So they're not guys that I'd be wasting keepers on. They're not guys in auction formats that I'd be spending a lot of money on. They're not guys in redraft leagues that I'd be drafting in the first 10 to 12 rounds, probably maybe even 15 rounds. Dynasty leagues, I'm holding on to them. I'm not cutting them, but I may not plug them into my lineup every day if I have better options. So, just your mileage may vary on that. All right, so now let's get into the lineup. In my mind, I think the two best players they have hitter-wise is Anthony Rendon and Trey Turner. Trey Turner he's a fantasy horse because he's a 5-category player. For those leagues that have 6 categories, he's probably a 6-category player as well. The guy's going to be a perennial 20-20, 25-25 guy, home runs and stolen bases. He's going to hit you 270, 280. He's going to be on base, 350, 360 clip. He steals a lot of bags. The only thing you got to be careful with him is that he's shown a propensity for getting injured. I don't think in his first couple of years he's played a full season yet. But that's because he's one of those kids where he's speedy. He plays all out. He's a great kid. He's definitely a guy you want on your team. He just needs to show a little more consistency, and he needs to maybe improve the power just a little bit to take that next step into the fantasy elite. He's definitely a guy in all formats that you want. Keeper leagues, you're going to use a keeper on him. Dynasty leagues, you want him. Redraft leagues, you're probably going to be taking him within the first 5 rounds. I don't see him going past 5 rounds. Auction formats, it really just depends on how you're forming your team. If you value stolen bases, you're probably going to spend a little bit more on him than you would other guys. I kind of disagree with that strategy personally. I would rather use my money later on with guys who are going to steal 10, 15 bags a year, but they'll only cost me $6, $7, than spend $25 on a guy who's going to steal me 30 bags. So, especially being as those guys who are stealing 10 to 15 bags, they cumulatively, they might have a lot of power. And what that means is you have to look at your roster makeup. Okay? If I'm trying to fill out my outfield late in a draft, instead of spending $25 on Trey Turner, I could spend $8 on 3 different outfielders. And if they all hit 15 to 20 home runs, I'm getting 45 to 60 home runs out of that spot, where Trey Turner might only hit me 16. And they might give me the same amount of stolen bases cumulatively as a Trey Turner did. But now, because I spent $25 on 3 positions total in the outfield, it gives me more money to then spend on a stud shortstop. I could go get a Carlos Correa or Francisco Lindor type player, you know. So that's where auction leagues are really fun. That's where they're very strategy based and stuff like that on how you're going to format your team. And maybe when I do some of those live drafts, maybe I'll try and get in an auction mock draft, because that's where I can really explain this a lot better. Anthony Rendon, I mean, the guy's just a steady Eddie. He's, you know, in the past couple of years is weird. He's had real slow starts. He's had really bad Aprils. I mean, he'll be hitting like 220 with like 3 home runs and like 8 RBIs at the end of April. And then all of a sudden you turn around and it's the middle of August and the guy's hitting 280, he's got 20 bombs, and he's got 70 RBIs. And it's like, where did that come from? I thought you were going to suck all year. So if he could ever have a good April, he'd be studly. He'd be like on like the Arenado level. Oh, that was the other one I wanted to tell you guys about. Yeah, Nolan Arenado. 8-year deal, $260 million or something like that to stay with Colorado. Huge. We'll get a lot into that when we get to the NL West and I do all Colorado. But yeah, Rendon, he's a guy, again, all formats, you want him. In auction drafts, I'm probably spending $25 to $30 on him. Depending on the flow of the draft, I'm probably not spending more than that, because he's not Nolan Arenado. He's not Jose Ramirez of Cleveland. So, but he's in that next tier. He's not the total top elite, but he's real close on that next level, I feel. So he's a guy I'm not spending big bucks on in an auction format, but he's definitely a guy I'll spend to have him. Ryan Zimmerman, who's probably going to be the first baseman. He gets older, but the guy just keeps hitting. The guy just knows how to hit. He's a solid major league hitter. You could probably pencil him in for 250, 260 average, on-base percentage around 330, 340. Guy's going to hit 25 home runs and knock in 90 RBIs. I mean, you can't get more steady than that. You know, so when you can plug that guy into your lineup every day, or, you know, in weekly formats, just pop him in for the week, you know he's going to produce. So, another guy you definitely want. Juan Soto, an outfielder, he came up last year and really, like, took the league by storm. The kid was just hitting home runs all over the place. So, if he can keep that up and doesn't have the sophomore slump, he can take that jump into the elite for the outfielders real quick. So if you can get in on him now in Dynasty and Keeper and stuff like that, you definitely want to. If you're playing in a redraft league with guys who, you know, they know about their own team, but they don't know about anyone else's team, you can definitely take advantage on that, where, you know, you might be able to get him in like the early teens in the rounds. But me personally, I'd be targeting him in the 8th to 10th round. Maybe even earlier, depending on if a run of outfielders goes. You just got to keep up with the flow of your draft. But he's got some legit elite potential. Adam Eaton, I mean, he's gonna get play. I think he'll probably platoon with Michael Taylor in center field. He's not going to give you anything like special, nothing to write home about. But he's going to hit 270. He's going to hit double digits in home runs, maybe 15 home runs. He'll steal a few bags. He'll knock in a few runs. I'm not keeping him in a keeper draft. I'm not drafting him ultra early in a redraft league. I'm not spending more than probably like $10 on him in an auction league, if even that. Dynasty League, he's got a lot of value because he's still going to produce. He's going to get playing time. If Taylor gets hurt the way he normally does, Eaton will be the everyday center fielder at that point. But he might even get pushed to a corner outfield spot because of this next guy. He was their top prospect. He's actually not eligible to be in the prospect lists anymore because he had too many at-bats last year. Once you hit more than 130 at-bats as a hitter or 50 innings pitched for your career, you're no longer considered rookie status. And that's Victor Robles. He was the consensus #1 prospect for the Nationals for a good couple of years. He was one of the top prospects in all of baseball for a good couple of years. And he's got all the potential in the world. It's just going to be whether he shows it at the major league level. He's got speed for days. Him and Turner at the top of a lineup could just create absolute havoc. If they could both be hitting and both be getting on, that could be really dangerous. They could both be stealing bases and hitting runs and all kinds of stuff, and it could cause a lot of problems for a lot of teams. It's just, is he gonna be Billy Hamilton? Who's basically never hits and he doesn't get on base a lot, but he's got speed. Well, that's great if you have speed, but if you never get on base, you can never steal a base. So, is he going to be that? Or is he going to blossom into, a really good player like a Trey Turner? The jury's out. I don't mind him if you're starting out like a new dynasty league. If you draft him in the mid rounds as kind of like hey, this guy's close and he could be a stud. I'm not taking him before some of the real stud prospects that are out there. I'm not taking him before Vlad Guerrero Jr. I'm not taking him before Eloy Jimenez. I'm not taking him before Fernando Tatis Jr. I'm not taking him before Pete Alonso. I'm not taking him before, Mitch Keller, the pitcher. So you definitely want to not jump on him too early, but he could give you really good value a little bit later. And that's the same thing for redraft leagues. If you're looking for guys who are prospects who are going to play this year, he's going to play. I just don't know how much he's going to produce. So he's definitely a guy that he's a sleeper type guy. He's a guy that I'm looking for good value, like that 15 to 18th round, maybe 18 to 20, and then go from there. Yan Gomes is a really intriguing option. I came up with Cleveland a few years ago, and really was just he hit for power, he hit for average, and then he got hurt. And the past couple of years with Cleveland, he produced okay power numbers, but his batting average fell off the table. He was barely a 200 hitter. So he came over to Washington. I think they traded for him. And it's going to be really interesting to see if he can get back to where he was, because he was on his way to being joining the real elite catchers in the game. The Salvador Perez, the Wilson Contreras, the Yadi Molina, the JT Realmutos, Buster Posey, stuff like that. He was right on his way to knocking on the door of that level of catcher. So it'll be interesting to see if he can regain that. If he can regain that, then he's a guy, again, where he's probably not going to be in the first 8 to 10 catchers taken, maybe even more than that, because, you figure Realmuto, Contreras, Perez, Ramos, Realmuto, Posey, because he still has catcher eligibility, Zunino because of his power. That's 8. Yeah, he might be around 10 to 12. He might be in the first group of catchers taken off the board, but if he's not, especially if you're in a 2-catcher league, you can get some really good value from him. So he's definitely a guy you should be looking to get. And then Brian Dozier, who Had some really good years in Minnesota. He's a power hitting middle infielder. He had some, like I said, some really, really good years in Minnesota. He's probably going to be their starting second baseman this year, so he's going to get an opportunity to show that he can still be that guy. If he does, again, great value. I don't think, again, is he going to be one of the first 8 to 10 second basemen taken off the board? Probably not. Probably not. But if you can nab him in the 15th round, I mean, if he hits 280 and hits 25 bombs, I mean, that's unreal production at that round. So he's definitely a guy I'd be looking for there. Other than that, moving on to their prospects, I mean, the only real prospect that I like is Carter Kieboom. And I know, I love it, Kieboom. And he's a power hitter too, so it's really awesome. His brother Spencer is the backup catcher right now for Washington. I feel he's probably going to get a look at some point this year. It might be a late season call-up. If there's injuries, if Turner gets hurt, he might get called up to play short. If Dozier gets hurt, he might get called up to play second. But, I mean, his calling card is his bat. He's the number 25 prospect overall in baseball in the top 100, and he's the number 6 prospect at the shortstop position. So, last year he hit 280. He was on base at a 357 clip. He had 138 hits. 48 of them went for extra bases. Over a third. That's awesome. I love that. I absolutely love that. I mean, you're looking at almost 40%. If you get 40% of the 138 would be right around 55, 56 hits. And he had 48 extra base hits last year. So you're looking at he gets extra base hits at least a third of the time, and a little bit more than that. That's great. And 16 of them went for home runs. So again, he's one of those guys that you're hoping that if he fills out his body a little bit more, that those doubles become home runs and he becomes a 20 to 25 home run guy, which at the second base or middle infield position is unreal production. The other guy is Luis Garcia, an outfielder. He's the number 75 overall prospect. He had a decent amount of at-bats last year. It was his first year in Pro Ball. He has no power whatsoever, but what's really intriguing about him is he hits and he gets on base. He had 298 last year, and in 500 at-bats, he only struck out 82 times. That in today's game is immensely valuable because with everyone hitting for the fences, with everyone, just trying to hit home runs and increasing launch angles and exit velocities and all this kind of stuff, the fact that you have a guy like this who gets on base, that's, if he's got any kind of speed whatsoever, he can steal bases. If he's on base ahead of some of these guys who do hit home runs, it's going to be runs scored. Because he hits at a high clip, it's going to be RBI potential. It's going to be batting average, on-base percentage. So when he checks off the boxes of 5 out of the 6, even though he doesn't have a lot of power, he's still going to have some really good value. So he's a guy that in my Dynasty League drafts, my Rookie League drafts that I'm doing this year, he's going to be the type of guy that I'm going to be looking to steal in like a late 3rd, 4th round, which in like rookie drafts you normally only have like 3 to 5 rounds, and he's going to be a guy that I'm going to be looking to. Hopefully he'll be out there and I can jump on him in like the 3rd or 4th round. So definitely an intriguing name that you definitely want to keep an eye on. I mean, like I said, he's already the number 75 prospect in baseball. So if he can continue those numbers, if he can improve on his power a little bit, he's going to shoot up the prospect rankings really, really quick. And I mean, they could have a really sick outfield in a couple of years. They could have Robles, Soto, and Garcia, and they could be set in the outfield for about 8 to 10 years. So that pretty much closes the book on Washington, literally, the book. So that concludes the National League East. Like I said, I'm going to try and do either 1 or 2 videos tonight and get through the Cubs and the Brewers. It'll probably be videos like this because they're both all their talents at the major league levels. Neither one of those franchises has a lot of prospects to speak of. I think the Brewers had like one great prospect, and that's about it. Cubs, I don't even know if they had any great prospects. They might have one marginally good guy you want to keep an eye on. So that'll wrap it up for this video. Again, as always, like, share, subscribe, ask questions, leave comments. If there's anything you want to see, if there's anything you'd like me to get a little bit more in depth on, stuff like that, just let me know, and I'll do my best to react and respond to you guys. All right, so we will see you guys later.